If there is a word that carries within itself a synthesis of the life and work of Trigueirinho, we could say it is this: humility. Humility as a gift, as a practice of life, as a spiritual science. A conscious humility lived with the simplicity of one who knows he may acquire an infinity of knowledge, merits, recognition, and prestige, but that without a humble heart one does not reach the ultimate goal, one does not cross the doorways of sublime realities between dimensions. Trigueirinho lived in this world, but his goal was never here. Everything he built and offered as a service had a single purpose: to elevate human consciousness and teach souls to awaken their true potential. And he thought of them all. When his gaze rested upon someone, it was never to notice what was superficial. He always found there potential, a being in evolution, a consciousness with infinite possibilities of transcending human condition and offering to creation the renewal of life through a higher evolutionary degree. His eyes were set beyond, and it was with this gaze that he walked his path, conscious that each action opened a door, generated a new possibility, and granted not only to himself but to all who accompanied him an evolutionary opportunity. This was his offering of praise to the Creator of life. This was how he gave thanks to the gifts received. This was his way of reviewing. When listening to his instructions, may we know how to hear them with the same intention with which he transmitted them. May we keep our hearts in the infinite, without failing to perceive in the detail of our days an opportunity to go beyond, to bring that which is sacred into matter. May each listening as well as each instant of life be transformed into service. Our greatest tribute to the one who instructed us will be to live that which he taught. The main intention of this meeting of ours is to help us to recognize what type of transition is happening on the planet Earth and in humanity, the humanity that lives on its surface. Because if we don't recognize very clearly which transition this is, and which is our new role here on Earth during this transition and in the future cycles that we may eventually be able to live here, if we don't understand this transition and if we don't try to live it, the individual and collective conflicts will be more acute. As from August 1988, the planet Earth entered its irreversible stage of transition. So until we reached this moment, humanity and the planet were being prepared for this change. So all the studies, all the teachings, all the works were preparatory works in the sense of people aligning themselves with their own soul, of people harmonizing their own bodies, isn't it? Of people working upon their character. All of this was the preparatory work. And throughout the planet, there was a preparatory work which reached all the points of the planet, a work in different forms. There was no corner of the planet where the message of alignment with the soul, of harmonization of the bodies had not reached. Through different paths, different ways, this reached all the places on the planet. This was said in all possible ways, in ways that from the people who are less intellectually gifted to those who are most gifted could receive this message. And we could see even during the recent years that this message was spread out throughout the world in all different ways. Even science, psychology, religion, philosophy, all the fields of life began to invite human beings and suggest to human beings that they could do their alignment with higher levels, that they harmonized their personality, concentrating their mind on the higher levels. So this preparatory was done in all possible ways. So as from August 1988, this stage ended. This preparatory stage ended because this was the deadline stipulated by the cyclic cosmic law, so that all beings could define themselves, all inner beings, the interior beings, the spirits, the souls, whichever way you want to call them. And when the whole galaxy entered this new stage of the galaxy, which was an irreversible situation which had no return anymore, this reflected upon the planet Earth, and within our calendar, within our earthly time, this happened in August 1988. So, as from this moment, the whole galaxy entered a different movement. That is, the whole galaxy walks irreversibly toward that which we call subtilization or sublimation of the matter. And this happens on all planes, in all levels, not only in the denser and more concrete levels, but this gradually happens on all levels. And we say really that in August 1988, a new solar calendar began. What does a new solar calendar mean? It means that a new cycle began for the entire solar system. A new cycle began. A new movement began. So this naturally reflects upon the Earth because the Earth is included into all of this. So as from that moment, when it became irreversible for the whole galaxy, the new direction, when the preparatory cycle was fulfilled and a new cycle began, everything was decided. Everything had been decided within each being, in the intimate part of each being. So the evolutionary work throughout the planet Earth changed its plane, changed its level. It's no longer a work to prepare people for a change, because the people who had to adhere to the change have adhered, and those who had not did not adhere, and they would do a different path. So we are in the middle of the planetary transition, and we are already living here on the planet Earth a fact that is called the Law of Purification. So we have entered the Law of Purification. You can see by the number of earthquakes that have been happening, and you have been seeing by the number of accidents that have been happening that the law of purification is enacted on the planet. And this law of purification has the tendency and the task to intensify its work from now to the next years. Before we continue with this reflection and before we enter the stages of planetary transition that we need to understand, we need to have it very clear what law of purification means in this sense, because in the preparatory periods it was said to people that people were going to be punished, and this way of explaining purification as a punishment is a human and earthly way of speaking of purification. And when the earth is changing its level of consciousness, we need to speak of purification from a broader, more elevated standpoint, a more cosmic standpoint, a more universal standpoint. So when we say that the law of purification decisively entered into action and that we are ruled by the law of purification, if it's seen not from a human and earthly standpoint, but a spiritual standpoint, we mean that the earth entered its process of liberation. So purification from the spiritual standpoint is not punishment. Purification from the spiritual standpoint is liberation. Liberation of what? What are we being liberated of? We are being liberated through a universal purification of those obstacles that did not allow our spiritual essence to develop. Is this clear? So each one of us who at this moment is being trained on the planet Earth or fulfilling a task on the planet Earth, because none of us is from here. We are here doing tasks, paying a karma, or fulfilling or carrying out a role, but no one is from here. So if we are here at this moment, under the law of purification that is in course, it means that as from this moment, our essence, our spiritual essence, that up to today has been a prisoner of the earthly conditions and the human levels of consciousness, because the human level of consciousness in an individual is one thing, and spiritual essence of the individual is something different. They are two different levels. So with the law of purification in course, the spiritual essence, immortal spiritual essence in each one begins to be liberated of human and earthly obstacles to its development, expansion, and growth. So this is what is happening on the planet Earth. What happens within the intimate place of each one during the law of purification, each one will gradually feel. As the law of purification is applied, each one gradually feels this liberation in a different way. Some begin to feel lack of interest for everything that is human in material life. This is a way that the law of purification is acting within themselves, because they are liberated of these interests to have other interests, to have other attractions, which are things that attract them that are more universal, in which all beings are included and not just a few beings. So some are feeling an increasing lack of interest for human, earthly, and material life. If this is well understood, the individual does not separate from life. They do not become a fugitive of life if this is well understood. They understand that that their lack of interest is the law of purification acting in them. So they channel all their forces for a higher interest, for a broader interest, for a broader field of interest. And then they are not dead, someone who is dead walking around, or someone who is marginalized to what is happening, but they become someone who is truly useful in the phase of transformation of the earth. So this lack of interest for human things and earthly things, this is a symptom that the individual is being worked upon by the law of purification. So they need to understand this, that they are not losing interest for dead things, and that they, for this, they will not become disinterested or will lose interest for everything. They will just lose the focus of their consciousness from dead, ephemeral things as the earthly and human things that no longer have life, which are no longer energized in this new stage of the world. So they will channel their interest of these things from these things to other things, to living things, eternal things, and universal things. So those who are feeling this sort of coldness before everything that before brought emotion to them or touched them, these are not people who are sick, as you could think. These are people who are being purified. So they need to understand this well, so that they can organize themselves for the new stages that will begin within their being, within their subjected worlds. If this person insists, if this person continues and resists this purification, and they continue forcing their attention and energy to be entirely absorbed by human material and earthly things, then they will enter a stage that could be called frustration. But the frustration of today is not the same of the one of before. Before this stage of the earth, we used to call frustration the individual not being able to realize that which they wanted, but this is not part of the consciousness of the new human being, because the new human being no longer thinks of doing what they want. They are tuned to do a higher will. Therefore, frustration for them has a different meaning, and we also need to update this word in our work. Frustration today is the following. When an individual has been touched by the law of purification, if they insist in the old interests, they frustrate the growth of their inner being, because their inner being no longer has anything to do with what they had done up to today. They have nothing to do with the human interest, earthly interest, psychological interest of human being up to this moment of transition of the earth. Their inner being are now in a different perspective. They are now visualizing a higher goal. And if the human being who has been touched by purification insists in the old process, this is their frustration. This is the frustration of today. So you see, if you have begun to feel lack of interest, distancing, and detachment for everything that before made you suffer in living flesh, This means that you have been touched by the law of purification and that the higher energy is taking over you to lead your entire being to a new stage of life, a new movement of the law of evolution. And this needs to be recognized, otherwise, you will be frustrated. Forget the concept you had of frustration, because in certain cases, for you to grow, it is necessary to, it's really necessary that the human ego be frustrated, and the frustration of the little ego is part of the higher purification. It is part of the law of purification that is acting upon the entire universe at this moment. So, if you want, you can have a completely different vision of the facts of your lives. While you were in the preparatory stage, while life was a preparation for the new stage of the earth, all your lives, your entire life was within material law, and within material law, the strongest wins. The ones who knows how to fight the best wins, or the ones who knows how to deceive the other wins. This is the material law in which the planet was enclosed in, because the planet didn't have this openness that it has now, and that is beginning to manifest. Now we are entering a different type of law. We are leaving the material laws to enter the material laws, to enter the laws of antimatter. In other words, the planet is coming out of physical laws to enter superphysical laws. And the entire humanity that is on this planet is going through the same transition. So all those laws, all those patterns, all those rules that you have used up to today in your human life and earthly life, this is no longer energized by the higher energy. Everything has entered a different rhythm, and at what is being helped, energized, and what is being impelled is the knowledge of superphysical law, the knowledge of material law, and the knowledge of immaterial life, subtle life, inner life, subjective life. Today you are being helped by the universal movement to see things within and not continue to see things outside. Can you see the difference? So, until a little while ago, we were looking for a room to work, thinking of our comfort. Now we don't look for a room to work thinking of our comfort. We are looking for the development of the consciousness. This is our search, not a room. We are looking for the development of the consciousness. And as a consequence of the development of the consciousness, we are going to reach an adequate room. Do you see the change in the attitude? So, it has ended. This stage of life on the planet Earth has ended, in which you looked for things, in which you looked for people, in which you looked for goods, you looked for things to do or things to have. This has ended. This is no longer helped by the energy. Today, each one is in life looking or trying to be that which they are inside, to be that which they are deeply inside. And as they are, they gradually attract things, they gradually attract circumstances. So it's no longer the case of struggling for any circumstance, to struggle for any earthly thing. It is the case to open for the development of the consciousness. And as the consciousness is developed, everything you really need, will come to you. Not that which you want, that which you truly need. And if you need realization, you will have realization of the ego. If you need frustration of the ego, you will have frustration of the ego. You will have whatever you need for the growth of the consciousness. So this new stage of the earth is not about looking for anything external, because everything that is external comes attracted by your own inner state. So we have entered a completely management of life, and you are invited to reflect on this point so that you won't be frustrated. But here it is a frustration that no therapy treatment will be able to resolve. The other one can. The other psychological frustration can even be resolved with medicines, but this type of spiritual frustration is not resolved with anything of the earth, but with the change in the attitude. And this change of attitude is not to leave and go after anything that is material, human, earthly, because this does not mean anything else for your inner being, who is already in a different course, who has visualized a different goal and is going toward a different direction that they did that they hadn't decided up to now. So see if you do the bridge with this internal and profound movement that has taken place within you, and see if you can be aware of your true goal. I'm saying this in this way, this categorical way, because those who are not in this new dispensation, on this new course, will probably not even manage to listen to this now, because in a balance given throughout the planet Earth in August 1988, there was this result that only 10% of earthly humanity had become rescuable, and 90% is useless for the new stage of the earth. And this is a piece of information that we have to have. All the prophecies made before, even authentic prophecies that said that it had been prophesied that 1/3 of humanity would become lost, these prophecies were not able to be fulfilled, and something different happened. 90% became lost and 10% is rescuable. So there you can see that the prophecies are real, but they depend on our behavior. They depend on our decisions. So that which was 2/3 of humanity that would be useful became 10% rescuable, and all the rest will be transferred to other planetary schemes that are allowed, and other levels of consciousness of the earthly state of consciousness that has been determined. So you see that when these things are known, our whole attitude before life changes, because now it's no longer the case of wanting to convince anyone of something, because everything is decided within themselves. Now each one has to assume their own decision. They have to assume the decision they have made. They have to assume the decision they have made and enter the new life and enter the new stage of the earth. That before, it's able to manifest very concretely on the life on the surface, will have to go through a process of purification on all planes, mainly on the physical plane, because the physical plane is totally compromised with contamination. So we know that although we have made our choice internally, and although we know that we are on other levels of consciousness living the new life and the new dispensation, we also know that physically we are incarnated on this surface of a planet that is beginning to enter its phase of purification that is also physical. So those who are lucid and have realized where they are, those who have managed to capture, to grasp what is truly happening, know very well where they are internally and know very well where they are physically. So you know that at this moment you are within a spiritual clarity that the physical brain cannot always understand, grasp. This is something irreversible. You are already within this clarity internally, but you are living incarnated in a physical, chaotic planet, in a state of chaos. So we have to learn how to live in this situation for a little longer. So you see that the tone of the work has changed, because now we have to see where we are, because we are in the middle of the situation of purification. There is nothing to be prepared for you any longer. The preparation that you needed to get here, you have had. Now you have to live harmoniously, you have to live the situation harmoniously, which is a situation of you internally know where you are. You are on a level of clarity, a level of vision. You are on a level of life that is higher, as higher beings and monads, as spiritual beings, and you are incarnated on a physical planet whose surface is entering an accelerated way in a state of chaos, a seemingly chaos, because just as you internally are not in chaos, internally you are connected with a series of laws, universal and cosmic laws, through your monads, through your higher beings, and through the divine and cosmic essence within each one, so you know where you are. This is your true place, and we are in need of becoming useful to a divine plan. And our main need is to no longer emphasize our personal plans. This is a great need we have today. Those who continue to put their own personal plans above our divine universal plan, those are frustrating their spiritual, internal, and divine essence in a way that today is very strong. Because the spiritual essence within each one of you has transcended this stage of staying on the planet Earth, going through experiences in function of the human ego. Each one of your essences has transcended this stage. So although all of you have, although all of you have personal schemes to live, you definitely really need to follow that material law that you have known for 2000 years. The law said, stay in the world without belonging to the world. That is, all of us can have our personal schemes because we are incarnated in a human ego, but these schemes are like a scene of a play, a theater play. We are entering the evolutionary law in its immaterial aspects, its superphysical aspects. And it's then clear that it is about a quality of life and not a quantity of things. It is not about doing things for 24 hours a day. It is about doing the things you are supposed to do with quality, with evolutionary quality, with spiritual quality. This is the point. So, those who within the material law have little time to serve, the little time you have within the material law must be used within the immaterial law. Everything has to be seen within the immaterial law. Even the food you eat, which is not only a physical fact, even the monetary energy that goes through your hands, which is not only a physical fact, even the beings made of flesh, bone, blood, nerves that you have in front of you, who are not only physical facts. You must be before these facts that are also physical in a different way, seeing the superphysical dimension beginning by you, beginning with you. So if you say, I am a problem, you are limited to the physical dimension. You are limited to the material law. If you leave this problem to run in a parallel way, and if you say, I'm not a problem because my essence, my divine inner essence has no problem, at this moment you enter a different law, and your lives begins to take place in a different way. Your lives begin to take a different rhythm and even a different external aspect. And then a point enters that it's necessary to recognize. It is the point of detachment. Because if all the planetary law and if all the intention of the divine of your divine essence is to lead you to the immaterial planes, of course you need to become detached of immaterial planes. Because if you are not detached of immaterial planes, you cannot go through the transition consciously. The transition is made only in the inner world, and here outside you are going through a conflict which is not pleasing. A immaterial law says that for you to enter a higher plane, you need to renounce the immediately inferior plane. If you don't renounce it, you don't enter the higher one. And this is something internal. For you to be able to enter a superphysical level, you need to release that which is physical internally. Because externally, we have to be within the physical laws also, but it depends on how we are, on which is our attitude within these physical laws. Because if at this moment of the world we live only the physical laws, life will truly become unbearable. So it's necessary to have an inner attitude of detachment, of becoming detached of everything that is physical, because then what is superphysical will gradually become clear. And when that which is superphysical begins to be clear and you begin to assume that which is superphysical, and this begins to come down to your lives, no external circumstance will be able to touch your balance anymore. No circumstance, no person, no fact, nothing will be able to disharmonize you and bring you out of balance. But then it's necessary to have an inner attitude of detachment for that which, everything that is physical, material, earthly. And it is necessary to have a disposition and openness to serve, to be useful, to give, to be that which you are inside. And this is an inner work. This is an invisible work. This is a secret work that many people need to take care of it more attentively than others. And each one will regulate themselves. Some have come with this ready from previous cycles or previous incarnations, and they feel within this attitude very naturally, without making great efforts. And others who have worked less this in the past, so they need to work a little bit more on this now. But now, this is a work that takes place in us when we have the intention to do this. It's enough to have the intention and to keep the aspiration. The work is carried out by itself, so you don't need to worry. You have no need to worry about this, because this is being led by a supreme intelligence, by a cosmic intelligence. We just need to open ourselves, say yes, and internally renounce or give up everything that is known, everything. Because everything that is known is entering the law of purification. Everything you know, all that which is it's your previous experience, everything is entering the law of purification. It will no longer be as it is. So internally you surrender everything that you know. Because at this point you need to choose to remain with that which is known or enter that which is unknown. Or start living that which is unknown. Start to live that which we have never lived. And how can you enter that which is unknown if you were attached to known situations? It's impossible. Impossible because each one has a space within themselves. You either open the space or the new cannot enter. That which is new cannot enter.